All right, here we go on section 4.4. If you'll remember earlier in this chapter, we graphed using tables back in section 4.1, and you had the x, you picked all your values for x, and then you did that math in the middle, and then you had the y's. And then you had to plot those points, connect them with the ruler. Well, this is another way of graphing, and it works when something is in slope-intercept form. So first, let's talk briefly about intercepts. The x-intercept, you can see right here, is shown by where a line crosses the x-axis. The y-intercept right here is shown, you can see it is where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay, so we're going to call the y-intercept B. We're not going to worry too much about the x-intercept at this point. So slope-intercept form is a linear equation written in this format. Y equals mx plus b. The slope is the m. This part right here is super important. Okay, the slope is the m. You might put a big star on both sides of this. Okay, an arrow, the slope, the y-intercept. So the slope, we've done a lot of work in 4.2 already on counting slope, rise over run, delta y over delta x, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I just said that all really fast, but that's all slope. So you should be familiar with that. And then the y-intercept is going to be the point in where the line crosses the y-axis. So let's get into some of these examples. So I'm going to leave this where we can see the y equals mx plus b up here because that makes this super easy if you are identifying the slope and the y-intercept. If it is in this format, then our slope is our m, is your slope. In this equation, what number is between the 0 and the x? It is -4. So our slope is -4, or we could even say -4 over 1, because a lot of times we like our slope to be a fraction. Our b, the y-intercept, so I'm going to put that in parentheses, and you should do the same. Our y-intercept, we won't write this out every time, maybe just this first time, is going to be the number that comes here after the x. So it is a -2. So that means if we looked at the graph of this line, it is going to cross down here at -2, and it's going to have a negative slope. So slope do nice, negative, nice, negative. It's going to be going down. So just to give you kind of a visual, and we'll look more at that later. Okay, as we look at number 2 over here, it is not in y equals format. Okay, there's this -5, and we need this -5 to get over on this side. So in order to get rid of a -5, we do +5 on both sides of the equation. I'm not going to write that under the x because this is x's and this is just the constant 5, so those are not like terms. So we've got y, these cancel each other out, equals 3 over 2x, and then +5. So the m, now that we have it in that format, is 3 over 2. The b, the y-intercept, is a +5. That is it. Take a look at 3. What number is in front of x? And if you're like, oh, there's nothing there, be careful. How many x's is this? You're right, it's 1. So our slope, our m is 1. Our b, the y-intercept, right back here behind the x, is a +4. On this one, our slope is 3. It's right there. Y equals mx plus b. What in the world? There's nothing back there. Well, remember, when there's nothing as a number, that is a 0. So our y-intercept is a 0. So if there's nothing back here, put it in. That's a 0. Let's move on. So you will either do these on your own or with your teacher, however your class does that. Flip the page to graph, and this is the most important part, and we're only going to do a little bit of it here, and then we'll definitely work with you on it tomorrow. So to graph, when it is in y equals mx plus b format, and then identify the x-intercept, we're going to not worry about that for now. So find the slope and the y-intercept. That's what you're going to want to do first every time. We just practiced that on the last page. So our slope is -3. We can write that as a fraction as -3 over 1. And we'll talk about why we want to do that in just a second. And then our b is a positive 3. So plot the y-intercept. This is the y-intercept. And draw all these arrows on your paper for now. We won't always. So y-intercept. So on the y-axis, okay, here's the y-axis, and go to positive 3 and put a point. Okay, that is our y-intercept. That is the point on the y. Then it says use the slope to find other points and draw a line. So use the slope. The slope is negative 3 over 1. So remember that is a rise over a run we have learned before. So watch me and then you might pause and do it. I'll do it several times. From this point, this is your B is always going to be your starting point. We are going to rise negative 3. That means we're going to go 1, 2, 3 down, and then we're going to run 1. And we're going to put another point. And I'm going to do that again. 1, 2, 3 down over 1. Okay, 1, 2, 3 down over 1. Those make a line. I could also go back up to where I started and keep that pattern going. So I could go up 3 and 1 that way. And then do the best you can. This is difficult for me, but you will use, oh my goodness, you will use a straight edge. That's not terrible. And connect those, make your line all the way across your graph, arrows on the end. So I'm going to repeat what we did here. We wrote down the M and the B. You plot the y-intercept, okay? And that very first point was right there. Put an arrow. Then from there, we use the slope. We went down 3, right 1, down 3, right 1. We are, for the most part, always going to run out to the right because we want to make sure Slope Dude would say nice negative as he went down this line because it has a negative slope. All right, moving on. So real life application says here the cost Y in dollars of taking a taxi X miles is that. So I'm going to put labels right here. The cost Y. So that means cost over here, and that is in dollars. And X is miles. So I'm going to label my graph. Label, 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 label. Did I say label? Yeah, label that graph. So again, to graph, we need our M, and our M in this case is 2.5. It's okay for a slope to be 2.5. Our B is 2. So just like we did up above, the first thing we did is we went to the y-axis and plotted this point. So I'm going to go to 2 on the y and put this. I'm going to put a little arrow. We won't always do that, but right now on good notes, that's a good thing to do. So we plotted that, and then we're going to make 2.5 over 1. We're going to make it a fraction, so we have a rise and a run. From that point, watch me, I'm going to rise 1, 2 and a half, and then I'm going to run 1. I'm going to put another point. Here's my half, and then 1, 2, run 1, put another point. Okay, and I run out of space, so I am good. This time I'm going to make a ray instead of a line, because when you're in real life, a lot of times you can't have, like in this case, 0 or negative miles. You can have 0 miles, but not negative. So that is our graph. And then interpret, interpret, interpret. This means, and write this gigantic on your paper. Interpreting is straight up just labeling. Use your labels. So the y-intercept, the B. Okay, so the y-intercept is at the point 0, 2. You can see it right here. So 0 is the X, so that's miles, and the 2 is the Y, which is the dollars. So then let's write that as a phrase. So you could either say 0 miles cost $2, or it is $2 for 0 miles. Or you could also say it's $2 just to start the cab, something like that. Okay, and then slope. The slope was 2.5 over 1. So again, let's put our labels in here. The rise or up and down label was dollars. The run is miles. Once you have it all written out like this, it makes it very easy to write a phrase or a sentence. So what this is saying is it's 2.5 or $2.50. That's $2.50. And this is 1 mile. So that means it's $2.50 for each mile, or for 1 mile if you want to say it that way. Okay, so interpreting, label, 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 and then you can easily write your phrase if you just put all your labels on there. X comma Y is always what your ordered pairs are. Your slope is always Y over X, or delta Y over delta X, like we've done before. Alrighty, and then we will do these on your own with you tomorrow. What I want you to do, and we're not going to worry about this part right now, I want you to try to write down what M is for this equation and B. You don't have to graph it yet, but you can do this part. I know you can. Same down here. Don't worry about this part. Write down what is the M from this equation and what is the B, and then you will be ready to go on graphing those tomorrow. And then in example 3, interpret. Interpret. So we're back to that example with the taxi. So this time the slope, which remember is a rise over a run, is 2. I'm going to write it as 2 over 1. Okay, that's your slope. And then remember, our rise label was money. Our run, our back and forth, our X label down at the bottom of that was miles. So in this case, it says it's a different taxi. This taxi costs $2 for 1 mile or for each mile. Okay, so it's a little cheaper as far as the cost per mile. So the other one was $2.50. And then interpret the Y-intercept. Okay, the Y-intercept is 1.5. That's your B. Okay, and remember that is always going to be 0 in the X and 1.5 in the Y. So again, your label, your X label was miles, your Y label was dollars. So you're like, what? 0 miles costs $1.50? That seems weird, but that's like your initial fee or your startup fee. So this cab charges you $1.50 just to get in, kind of. You know, if you got in and they said, oh, it's this much, and you got back out, you wouldn't pay, but it's just $1.50 just to get in, or as their flat fee. They're going to charge you that and then charge you per mile. So that's it. I'm going to stop there, and we'll do those on your own together tomorrow. Or if your teacher has been telling you to do those, then go ahead and finish those up above.